Ignore what my hair looks like, but this is about D&D. And I thought about, hello guys, Charging Ryuk here. I thought about out of the dozens of characters I had created using D&D Beyond's website, there was one that stuck with me the most for his story, mainly. And it kind of relates to me pretty well. Um, and it's funny because I'm wearing red, and the story is about a red dragonborn, barbarian, named Bharash. And Bharash was a part of a village that his father, an ex soldier, a lieutenant from the Kingdom of Draconia. I'm hoping I'm getting my lore right. If not, people can correct me. Um, his father was a dual wielding, a battle axe wielding fighter. His mother was more of a lightly blue colored um, dragonborn, and she was mostly a sorceress, a very good one at that. Barash was never born with any magical talent, but he had a very good. Say he academically he wasn't that all that smart. Barbarians aren't really all that smart, but he at least knew the basics from right or wrong, and he trained with various weapons, trying to figure out on what he would be. But he just really was drawn to great swords. But yet, the barbarians that were there pushed him to use a great axe instead, though he wasn't quite happy with it. He just agreed with what the others around him had told him. And in the village, there wasn't just dragonborns. There were many, many different people, many different races that lived there. All of them were welcome. And they were also taken in wanderers, people who had no place to stay. And they were being trained. Some of them were being trained, some of them, in smithing, all that kind of, the basic jobs. And it was going well for a while for Barash. Barash was getting stronger, and he too had a good childhood friend who was basically the only one who could calm him down when he lost his temper. And that dragonborn is named Arya. She's a much deeper blue, almost kind of got like a purple tint to her skin, or scaled skin, as a dragonborn. She was the only one that could really calm him down when he got too carried away. It just points out that it's quite obvious that Barash had a crush on her, but really didn't know what to say. And the reason being is because Barash had a very bad temper. I too have a very bad temper, which is why I relate to this guy so much. But with Barash, I took it with... I added to it. One day, a scout came running back. He looked very shaken up. The scout was a young halfling. He had scouted ahead looking for the supplies that were supposed to be coming for trade and whatnot, and it never showed up. So, obviously, Barash's father sent out the scout, right? Well, Barash was in the middle of training. And that's when basically shit hit the fan. A bloodthirsty orc and leading a group of bandits attacked the village. And this orc somehow was twice the size of any normal orc. So you can probably say he was probably maybe an ogre, something along those lines. And he had zero control of himself. He even killed his own men, regardless. But it was the weapon he was holding that made him so formidable. He attacked the village. The people of the village did everything they could to keep the innocent away safely, but all their exits, all their known routes were ambushed. So basically, here comes the tragedy, because you can kind of assume where this is going. This is Bharash's first taste of battle. Legitimate live or die battle. And seeing some of the people he cared about die, he went into a rage and was taken out bandit after bandit, fighting his way, trying to get his very people, the people he cares about, to freedom. And, well, that was his first rage. His first taste of battle, he was doing well. He did get some cuts, one above his eye. He did get his horn on top of his head did get cracked due to a attack to the head, where he dodged it, but from an axe. So he basically, at this point, some of the people who were fighting managed to save some civilians, some of the innocent, and get them to somewhat of safety until some bandits found them, and then the bandits slaughtered the ones that were protecting the innocents, and then slayed the innocents. So there wasn't a lot of people left that were known to the village. And Bharash's father and his mother were in a desperate fight against this leader, this orc. And this orc carried a weapon called the Berserker's Great Axe. And Bharash's father got wounded. He got shot in the knee with an arrow and got knocked to the side. His wife came to his aid, and Bharash is his father, and Bharash seen him raise his battle axes to try and block the orc's attack with the Berserker Great Axe, failed. Bharash watched both his mother and father die. I guess you could say the pain of loss was too hard for him. And this is where he lost all sight of himself, where he completely gave in to his rage. And everybody has this primal rage, right? Or you tap into it. Sometimes you have zero control over it. This is why I relate to Bharash so much, is because I too have, back especially when I was younger, tapped into this rage where I couldn't control it, to the point where it feels like it's completely sentient. Like it's evolved to that point where it's sentient. To where it has a mind of its own. I know some people say that's kind of dumb, but in this sort of sense, with this character, Bharash, it consumed him at this point because he didn't know if Arya was still alive. He tried so hard to keep the very people, the innocent people he had behind him, alive, and they were slaughtered. Anyone who remained tried to calm him down and ended up being slaughtered themselves by Barash's hands because at this point he could no longer control himself. Charging towards the Ark, it was a very, very dangerous fight. He ended up with the slash on his back, and he sustained some other injuries that are visibly shown around his legs and his arm, his left arm. But somehow he managed to get the orc to drop the axe. He managed to do enough damage to where the orc dropped the axe, and using that very same axe, he cut off the head of that orc. And here's the next part. Where is Arya? Where is the very person who could calm Bharash down? Where is she? Well, she had actually snuck away thanks to Barash's mother, who she was training under, because she was born a gifted sorcerer. She managed to get to a post somewhere to where she managed to find some of the king's guard, some of the soldiers that were there, and she managed to get help. By the time Arya had gotten there, and it happened to be a storm happened to appear at the same time. Basically, it goes to show just how much pain it was, because when the soldiers and Arya appeared at the village was basically destroyed. There was nothing left. There was bodies everywhere, blood everywhere. And what they found standing on top of the very body of this orc was a young dragonborn wielding the berserker axe, just roaring in pain and sadness. Time away, let's say 10 years passed. 10 years passed. Bharash is obviously older. He's buffed up. He's taken a job as a mercenary for hire. But some groups are very afraid of traveling with him because there's a very serious risk. See, Bharash is actually haunted. He's haunted by those he lost. He can see them, he can hear them. Some blame him for not being strong enough, for not being truly capable to help. There are some that actually do help him, that try to help him. He spent another 10 years being tortured by these various souls, being traumatized, being to the point where he can't sleep at night, because he relives that night. So, he's been through several groups. Several groups of people have hired him to tag with them, and yet they all ended up somehow tragically dying very painfully. Because he still carries the Berserker Axe. He carries the Berserker Axe, and he carries the damaged battle axe of his father with him. The damaged one. Still sharp. He uses it for basic normal things, but otherwise it stays hooked to his belt. He doesn't use it otherwise. But a lot of times people would see him fight with basically his fists. Even though the Berserker Axe is there, the Berserker Great Axe, I should say. Just specifically the Great Axe. That people wonder why he won't use the Great Axe most of the time. Well, he's actually afraid of using it. And this is where some people will say it's kind of dumb. But what if there is a possibility if someone's attuned to a weapon to such an extent that their very soul gets absorbed into the weapon itself? And remember when I said about the orc? The orc would even attack and kill his own group of bandits that serve under him. He became twisted. He became bloodthirsty. That's all he cared about, was bringing harm. He didn't care about getting rich. He just wanted to mutilate as many people as possible. And this is the orc. But what if that same personality, that lust for blood to destroy, consumed somebody every time they wielded the axe? So that is one of the reasons why he doesn't like using the axe. He knows it's haunted, he knows it's cursed. He knows what happens to him when he wields the axe. But he can't stop it. He can't get away from the axe because, well, he's cursed. He's attached to it. Hence why he can never sleep at night. So when people do urge him to sleep, and this is kind of how he ended up with a name for himself, not just the Bharash the Berserker, but Bharash the Companion Slayer. Hence why nobody wants to team with him. Nobody wants to rely on him. Some people have actually tried, another group of mercenaries tried to use his craziness, this nature that he can't control, and it backfired on them. But one day, Bharash entered a tavern, cloaked, obviously, and he's sitting there, having a drink, and something catches his eye. Something blue. And he didn't think of anything of it. Just sat there, finished his drink, whatever meal he might have had asked for, paid. But then, something had slammed next to him. And there was a dragonborn hand, blue, obviously, right there. And on the wrist of this hand was a bracelet. A bracelet that was given to a young blue dragonborn by someone's mother as a gift, mainly just for being friends with her son. Needless to say, Arya has finally found the very dragonborn that she was looking for, the elder remaining survivor of Bharash's father's village. She asked some questions, and when there wasn't a response, she said something that only Bharash would know, and Bharash all of a sudden had this feeling of kind of an oh shit moment. Very surprise moment. Because the word that she mentioned was that something that only Bharash would know. And it's a bit funny because Bharash used to gather blueberries with her. And at one point, even without thinking about it, he had called her his favorite blueberry. So that's the part that's funny. That's kind of when she really got the hint that this guy likes me. You know, to have this, but in a sense, both of them like each other. That's the whole point. Hence why he also has this bent of fear that he's about to get his ass whooped. And that's exactly what happened. See, Arya didn't just become a full-fledged sorcerer and was very, very adept, very good at what she did. She was also a bit of a rogue. So she didn't really, truly make her presence known until she was right there. Right beside Bharash. She had punched him square in the face, which knocked him flat on his ass. And why do I mention that point? Well, there's a reason. Despite Bharash's history, and when people realized that Bharash, the companion slayer, was in the tavern, which freaked out everybody, which ended up causing guards to rush into the tavern to arrest him for murder. Though he was guilty of it, and he would willingly go, Arya stopped it and said he is under the protection of the kingdom of Draconia. Because she became, let's say, I guess somewhere earned some of the ranks in the kingdom, so she had some sort of an authority. She had basically made Bharash join her group because she had agreed to a mission that was very dangerous. A mission that included, that the main reason for this mission was to stop a necromancer. And in Arya's mind, she had already planned to find a way to get this Berserker Axe, to get this absolute pain away from a man, from the Dragonborn, or a man that she loved, to basically save him. But one way of saving oneself is basically believing in oneself, finding the one's power within themselves to overpower an evil. All she had to do was give him a key, give him something to trigger this moment in his mind that he could overcome his fear. that hold him. Arya had both a wizard, a cleric paladin, and another rogue with her. Their task was to stop a necromancer. A very powerful necromancer. And this necromancer was wanting to open basically the gates of hell. He wanted to unleash all the hellspawn on the world. Arya knew that the only way that they could succeed is if they could have asked any other barbarian, but why did she want Bharash? Well, she wanted Bharash because Bharash was the only one that she thought would be able to do it, would be able to strike fear into the necromancer. And at some point, after he had no choice but to agree, Bharash joined the group, but also maintained his distance, just in case if something happened. Any scuffle that they had with any wandering bandit or any thief or anything else, Bharash handled those basically barehanded. He'd never used the great axe even once. But there was a time where the necromancer unleashed an undead horde upon them. So many that Bharash had no other choice but to reach for the great axe and use it. And he raged. And one thing about this is why every time when he grabbed the berserker axe, he would immediately go into a rage. Even though he never really initially wanted to, it just always happened when he grabbed a hold of the berserker axe. As soon as it was in his hand, that's when it happened. He raged. And when he raged, he lost all control of himself. And this was Arya's and her other companions' first time seeing him in an uncontrolled state, fully under control of the berserker axe, unable to tell who's friend or foe, not even caring whether you're a friend or a foe. And they did everything, not only just to stop the undead horde, but to stop Bharash. Bharash also managed to cut the necromancer. Just cut. Just cut alone. And when you look at it, Bharash topples over this necromancer. So just that one cut, and having this fury, this uncontrolled, bloodlust-filled dragonborn in front of him, face to face, actually scared the necromancer. Frightened him very badly. Yes, the necromancer got away at that point and managed to get to where the gate to hell basically was, and began his ritual immediately to undo the gate, to open the floodgates basically. Though it took everyone, they managed to get the berserker axe away from him enough for Arya to calm him down. And just like before, Arya managed to calm him down. At this point on, they had their long rest. The wizard, or actually, Arya and the wizard kind of took turns casting calm minds. or to calm him down, to make sure he's calm, so that maybe he can get a full night's sleep. It didn't, really work all too well. He did get some sort of sleep, but not a long rest. Basically, everybody entered this final fight not being fully rested. So needless to say, Arya, the wizard, and even the paladin cleric really didn't have enough spell slots. They tried to save their best spell slots for certain things in case it was basically their final option. They knew there was a good chance that all of them were going to die, but their best option in their minds, they fully believed in Arya, and Arya fully believed that Bharash would save them all, would be the one thing to help them. Bharash didn't think so. He thought he was going to be the cause of everybody's death. So that's why he worried about it. And he set up a plan with the wizard. Told the wizard to save 2 spell slots. One for teleport, one for fireball. Told him that when a situation comes, use teleport, but as soon as you enter that teleport, I want you to cast fireball, leaving me with the necromancer. Basically, that was the plan. Force everybody through the portal. Wizard casts fireball, leaving Bharash by himself with the necromancer. They entered that final fight, and somehow Bharash got separated from everybody else. Not just by his own choosing, but because the necromancer had left some traps for them. And Arya, the wizard, and the rogue, and the paladin, cleric, were trapped with the necromancer, being forced to fight. And it was a tough fight. A very, very tough fight. Arya used a short sword. Rogue had daggers. And the paladin, shield and mace. The wizard cast a spell here or there. But they were running out of time. The necromancer almost finished his ritual to open the gate. And as soon as he opened the gate, all of a sudden they heard this explosion, this loud boom coming from somewhere. And landing behind them was Bharash. Bharash had finally managed to punch his way through to get to everybody. The rogue had taken quite a bit of damage, and the cleric had used one of her healing spells to heal him, but that was the last of her healing spells. Her spell slots were all gone. Arya had already used her spell slots to heal the wizard. The wizard had 2 spell slots left, both a level 8 and a level 9. Bharash looked at the wizard, and he grabbed the berserker axe, but just before he drew it off of his back, Arya had thrown something to him, and said something to him like this. This is what the king of Draconia was going to give to your father, but your father denied it. He told the king to hold on to it so that he could give it to, so that basically you could have it. And in that case was the flame-tongued greatsword. And looking at the sword in this case that's been flown open, he still had a hand on the Berserker Axe. And he was about to go into a rage. He grabbed a hold of the flame-tongued greatsword and looked at it. And he had a flashback. Kind of a memory. And then this is where the moment where the spirits come in. Where you have the spirits that blame him are spouting all this nonsense, and then sooner or later there's like this little flash of light. This little flash of light splits into two. Everybody else is low health. They're on their last legs. They can't really do much. They're just barely surviving at this point. Arya's doing everything she can. The cleric paladin, or paladin cleric, is doing everything she can. The rogue is just barely holding on. I'm getting to the part now where there's two endings to this story. To Bharash's story alone. The first part of this story goes like this. The first ending. Bharash raises the great Berserker Axe. And through these two lights, nobody else can see this but him. And it's why he's also the haunted one. He sees an image of both his father and his mother. And while looking at the battle axe in front, right above his head, he looks and he finally sees what's been tormenting him. The very soul of that very same orc. That very same orc whose soul became trapped inside the great Berserker Axe. Realizing this, he also finally realized something about himself, something that only Arya knew. Because, well, she's considered the only living person who knew him since his childhood, but he finally realized what he had to protect. What really mattered to him. And in that moment, you can say that he dropped attunement to the Great Berserker Axe and attuned to the Flame-Tongued Greatsword. And with the Flame-Tongued Greatsword, I assume that you need a command word to ignite the flames. So obviously, he gave it the command word Arya. So when he rose the Berserker Axe, he also rose the Flame-Tongued Greatsword. And placing the Berserker Axe in front of him like this, to the side, he brought the Flame-Tongued Greatsword down upon the Berserker Axe, cutting it in half. Obviously, a very high roll would have needed to make that happen, but when he made that movement, he said the command word, Arya, and when that flame-tongued sword lit up in flame, it started out blue before it became that normal flame color, reddish-orange, and all you heard was the ting-tang clang of the Berserker Axe falling. and he threw what remained of the Berserker axe to the side, and he pointed the flame-tongued greatsword and said, "The one known as Bharash, the Berserker, the companion slayer, is now dead. I am Bharash of the Flame Tongue. I'm the Barbarian here, so he's gonna kick your ass." Obviously, I could have said a much better line than that. But, that being said, the Necromancer finally did unleash the gate. He did open the gate. And the only way to close that gate is to kill the Necromancer. So, looking at the wizard and nodding, the wizard did exactly what their deal was. Using the teleport spell, teleported both the paladin cleric, Arya, and the rogue, and the wizard elsewhere. But in that final moment, instead of going with everyone, because obviously Bharash went into a rage and just was laying waste to everyone. Every demon, every undead that came by, he was just laying waste to all of them. None of them got even close to his friends. Not one. And in that moment of rage, he stomped his foot down with a flick of his tail. He unleashed his breath weapon, roasting them. Thus, yes, more came, and more and more. It was an unending fight, but he managed to get to the Necromancer. And he slayed the Necromancer, thus closing the gate. But that was after what the wizard had done. The wizard did exactly what he was asked. Just as he was teleporting away, he did a flick of his wrist. A level 9 spell, Fireball. Which the whole cavern that they were in, yes, Bharash took some fire damage from that. But he didn't care. The horn that I would say that he did have that was slightly cracked, well, he's missing that horn. And he's also missing part of his tail. And I'm saying that because in the second part of the ending that I had written or had thought up for him was that in the first part of the story, he basically died. And he basically became the gate's guardian, where his soul bonded with the flame-tongued greatsword only to become physical as someone was to reopen the gate. They had to challenge and defeat the guardian in order to get to the gate. But you also had to climb through a bunch of rubble and a bunch of other crap, and whatever traps that remained. But that ending 1 basically ends with Barash's death, but he died a hero. But why mention some of his injuries if ending 2 means he survived? He did. In ending 2, Bharash survives. But what happens is, it takes him 3 months to get to where his friends are. 3 months later, Bharash, no longer wearing a cloak, no longer trying to hide himself, he was rescued by a group of people. Some of them were dwarves, some of them were elves, and some of them, hell, there might have been a couple halflings or a dragonborn, who knows, had found him collapsed. He had managed to dig himself out of the rubble. They managed to bring him back to health, despite, missing part of his tail, missing a horn, obviously some additional injuries from battle. It had taken him 3 months before he was finally able to reignite with Arya and the rogue, the wizard, and the paladin cleric. Basically, ending 2 was basically ended the same way, but in that moment before basically at this point on, you can basically say that Arya was pregnant. Arya and Bharash did end up having a child. They did end up going back to Draconia, while the others stayed elsewhere, but they still kept in touch. But basically, you have a hero's ending with Bharash, where Bharash died a hero finally, to where ending 2 means he could somewhat maybe carry on his story for another time. But basically, the following ending to that would mean that he basically got happy after with Arya and their child, and following in his father's footsteps in a way, they rebuilt the village that was lost. And he was given all respect from the kingdom, because the king knew that what happened wasn't his fault. So he was further protected from any other so-called crimes he might have done when he left Draconia. Well, unless he managed to get back, he managed to leave Draconia for various reasons, but that's for another story. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this, then leave a like down below. I have various other characters that I could discuss for their following backstory, because, well, I'm a guy who has an interest in D&D, but yet has never played. And a lot of these backstories are basically coming off from the top of my head, so I never had any interest of writing them down. But with Barash's story I had in mind since the very day I created him. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys want to see more of this, let me know. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.